It's me and your mom. So you're my second guest.
Okay.
This is very exciting.
All right.
I'm still kind of growing with this, but to start with, I didn't give you a list of questions.
No, you did not.
And stuff.
Even though I asked for something.
I didn't know where it was going to go right off the bat.
It's all right.
And I'm kind of cheating as a brother-in-law.
Okay.
That should probably know more about you and don't.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, there's distance, geographic distance.
So, before getting too far,
okay.
I kind of, I let a little bit known about you already. You're my sister-in-law.
Yes.
But start from the very beginning. What is your origin story, Cami? Who are you? Where did you come from?
Okay. All right. My origin story is I was born in the state of Washington, in Tacoma, Washington. My parents, I have one older brother, and my parents moved when I was like about 6 months old to Utah.
Okay.
And that's where I have stayed. I grew up in Utah. I went to school in Utah, and I've stayed in Utah. So that's a little bit of at least geography where I'm coming from. My parents split up when I was about 2.5, and so it was mostly just my mom and my brother and I. So my mom got remarried when I was 15. So it really was just the three of us for, I would call my formative years.
Okay.
Because honestly, by the time I was like 19 or 20 is when I moved out for college. So I had more time at home with my mom and my brother and I. So it's just the three of us. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my upbringing. Just in just a suburb north of Salt Lake City in Bountiful, Utah is where I grew up.
Where'd you go to school when you got out away from home and ventured off to study?
Oh, it's funny because I tried, as I said, I've stayed in Utah, and I've tried many times to leave the state of Utah, and it's like the universe has kept me in Utah because I applied to multiple universities. But I did apply to the University of Utah, and I got a full ride scholarship to the University of Utah. And so, how do you turn down entirely free tuition? And so that's where I decided to go. And I went to the University of Utah, got a Bachelor of Science degree in biology. So that's my educational background. And after college, I applied for at least 50 jobs outside of the state of Utah. And my mom was a little like, you're really not even going to apply for one job in Utah? And I was like, fine. And this was in the day where you still looked for jobs in the newspaper.
Right.
So I was at my mom's house on a Sunday, and she was kind of giving me a guilt trip about, I haven't applied for a single job in the state of Utah. That's how badly I wanted to leave the state of Utah. And I was like, fine, Mom. Opened up the Sunday paper, and I was like, fine, I'll apply for this job. And it was with a company called Myriad Genetics. And I got an interview. I applied, got an interview, got the job. In the interview, there was an attractive man that was on the interview committee, and he is now my husband. So it's just kind of funny how I have intentionally tried to leave Utah a lot.
But I didn't want to let you go.
It absolutely, I definitely feel the forces of fate have kept me in the state of Utah. So I have just now come to accept at least fate, pick up the clues and roll with it.
So this fellow that was on the interview committee, interview committee,
yeah,
that uses power and his influence to trap you into a marriage.
Yes, that was entirely how I would describe our courtship.
Is that my brother?
That is your brother, Jeremy.
So, and that was your first time meeting him?
Yes, that was our very first meeting. I mean, in the world of what we were both dating other people at the time, and so I mean, just we got to know each other as friends, and then we both within probably about 2 months, both of us ended our relationships, and then we ended up getting together because we were already hanging out in a friendship group.
So did you already have the job? He didn't hold that over your head?
He did not. He did not. Although he could. I mean, that could be a card in his back pocket, but I have no idea.
Right. I won't tell you what he told me. No, I'm just kidding. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
The whole trying to escape from Utah and couldn't get away.
I really intentionally did try to, on multiple occasions, find my escape out. But I was like, you know what? I just need to be here.
So the obvious question, well, does that mean you're Mormon?
Oh, that's a humdinger of a question that I get all the time.
Thousands of times.
I am not. I was never, our family was never Mormon. I was raised in a very predominant Mormon community though. So the Mormon communities are divided into what they call wards, and within multiple wards there'll be a stake, and they all share that. Multiple wards will share one church, and they go to that church. So our ward, we were the only non-Mormon family in our ward. I've had friends that grew up, and it was very divisive. I actually felt very included in the Mormon community without them trying to be pushy about converting myself, my brother, our family. So I did a lot of, community things within the Mormon culture. they have a girls' camp every year for the girls, and I always went to that. I played church basketball, I played church volleyball. I felt very included. So I feel like I'm a pretty knowledgeable non-Mormon. And so... But I don't have any negative, I really didn't have a lot of negative experiences with kind of being I never felt like an outsider.
Very nice. So it's more kind of it's the community is there, and that's what.
I mean, it was so predominant, and all of my friends were Mormon, that people just assumed that I was Mormon. If anybody asked me directly, it's not like I tried to pretend I was. I mean, I was very honest if they asked me, but I remember in my senior year in high school, starting in 9th grade, the Mormons go to one of their courses each year that they have to take in school is seminary. And it actually is an off-site building next to the high school that they go to seminary. And there's a seminary graduation in 12th grade. And I had people that I had known through all of junior high and high school. And they were just like, well, we'll see you at seminary graduation. And I was like, I'm not even Mormon. And it just kind of blew their minds. It's the power of assumption. Mm-hmm. Everybody assumed I was, so nobody really asked me. I never denied it. I really never tried to pretend that I was somebody I wasn't, but they truly just assumed that I was, so that questions were never asked. So I have no idea what would have happened if they would have known. Would they have treated me any different? I have no idea.
I doubt it. I feel like Mormonism gets a bad rap for people that aren't, they're just from the outside of it.
I know. I feel like there's this whole oh my gosh, what's happening? And it's a very family, community-oriented culture at the end of the day. So I was the recipient of so much of that positivity. So.
So if you had been able to break away from Utah, what were some of the other schools that you were interested in getting into?
Definitely wanted to go up. I applied to UW, so I would have loved to go and live in Washington. So wanted to go up to Washington. I applied for jobs in Seattle. And then my dad lived in Northern California, so I applied to some schools. One of the schools I got accepted in was the University of the Pacific, which is kind of near, I think it's near Stockton. I can't remember. And I got into that one, but it's a private school. So when you look at the tuition of a private school versus my full ride scholarship. I was just like, wow. It's funny because a few years ago I traveled quite a bit for work. I drove by the campus, just kind of like, oh my gosh, this was because it was down, and I got like a partial scholarship with the University of Pacific, but it was still like thousands and thousands of dollars difference in yearly tuition that it was just like, I can't.
Yeah.
But I did drive by it. I mean, like 20 years later, I'm like, let me check out this campus.
Jeremy went to Purdue.
Yes.
NCAA school. He was
Yes.
looking at some other Big Ten schools. He had academic scholarships, music scholarships, all these things and his dad lived out in Indiana, so I think he got in-state tuition, which all those really helped. Mm-hmm. When it came time for me to graduate, in-state tuition, public college in Oregon.
Yeah.
I can afford it. I didn't even apply. I applied to one college.
It funnels your decision making very efficiently.
Yeah. So outside of Mormonism, Utah is also known for just being a beautiful state for outdoor recreation.
Yeah.
And something that I do know about you and your family is you are probably one of the most active, adventurous families that I know.
Aw, thanks.
Is that something that has always been a part of what you've enjoyed?
So I have to absolutely credit Jeremy, my husband, on this one. So again, growing up, my mom, my brother, and I. So my mom grew up, and her dad took their family camping. So she grew up camping, and she told me this story that she tried to take my brother and I when we were kids. I don't remember. I have no memory of this camping trip, but she really did try. I'm gonna still carry on this camping, that I grew up with, my kids are gonna have, and on her own, it was a total disaster. I think we made it one night, and she's like, this is ridiculous, nobody's having any fun, packed up and went home. And then we just really never went camping ever again. That I don't have a whole lot of memories. My stepdad, when my mom got remarried, he's an outdoorsy guy, so they have, I do remember one or two camping trips in that regard, but it was never we never went backpacking. My camping was church girls camp. I did that. But I really didn't get into the outdoorsy, adventurous world until I started dating Jeremy, and he was just so excited and enthusiastic about camping that I was like, it is amazing, but I did not grow up with it, and I have found that it is definitely not for everybody. We've gone camping with people that are like, oh, I didn't realize that there's nowhere to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, no, there's not.
You're talking about there's everywhere to go to the bathroom.
I know. I mean, there are places, but you wanted a flushing toilet? No, that's not available. So that absolutely was something that I really think Jeremy fostered. And then when we started a family, we were just, green light, go. We were going to keep and raise our kids as if they never experienced anything but camping and the outdoorsiness. With our first son, he was born in September, and his very first camping trip was when he was 4 months old. So that would have been in December in Utah, and it was cold. And I know that at least my mom was horrified that we were taking a 4-month-old baby camping, and it was 14 degrees outside.
And you're a brand new mother too.
And I'm a brand new mother, and but we were just kind of we're doing this.
Yeah.
It was almost this badge of this was our idea, and we're gonna do camping. So I don't even care what the weather's like. We're doing it.
Oh, wow.
And so then when we had our second son, we had the 4-month mark. He could not be older. He had to go camping also at 4 months. It was easier because that was in July that we went camping. But so both of my boys went camping when they were each 4 months old.
That reminds me, one of the first times that we had hung out, there was a spring break. John, younger brother, was still in high school. I was in college, and we all came out and went to Moab together for spring break.
Okay.
And I think that was one of the first times that we actually hung out for an extended period. And that was when I really got a taste of Jeremy's like total, like he was outdoorsy growing up, but not to the extent like you described. And I was actually just telling my lady friend the story that we went on this, it was like an 11-mile round trip hike, but it was the second half day. We'd already done hiking that morning. This was like to go see where the Colorado and the Green Rivers meet.
Oh yeah, the confluence.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as we got within probably a couple hundred yards, we crossed a road. All these Jeeps are driving back and forth, and I'm like, Jeremy,
we could have driven
we could have driven this far to start with. He's like, that's not the point.
In the car that he had at the time, he could not have driven out there. In all fairness, I mean, I'm sure that he also had you guys along for the, ride of the experience. We have had multiple friends, especially his fraternity friends from college. They come out to Utah, and it has been referred to Utah boot camp when Jeremy takes them out for the weekend. Because they're like, I have not been this active. I can't remember.
So, going back to your boys.
Yes.
You have 2 boys.
I do.
Tell me about them.
I have my oldest son. His name is Kolby. He is 14 years old. And I have my younger son. His name is Declyn, and he is 11. They're about 2.5 years apart.
And where did the names come from?
Oh. It's so funny that both of our boys, we had decided what their middle names were going to be, like when I found out I was pregnant. Kolby, I had him 4 weeks early. So he was my first, and he was coming early. So we were not ready. And we were still going through the baby name book when we went to the hospital. And I remember that morning, still in labor, because we got to the hospital like at midnight. And so like by 7 or 8 in the morning, things are going along. Finally, I'm like, we got to get a name, because we do not have a name for this baby that's coming. And in the book, I was at the P's. I remember that I was like, all right, I'm over halfway through the book of names. End up having the baby, still don't have a name. And so the next day, I'm just recovering. Kolby's pretty small because he's early, so they are keeping him at the hospital for like the maximum amount of time, which I think is 2 full nights that they want to have him there. So delivered him at like 5 p.m. The next day we're making some progress. We're making some lists of names that we like. We've narrowed it down to maybe 5 names, but we haven't decided. And so I think it was around dinner time that second night, the nurse comes in and she's like, no pressure, but it's really more simple, like paperwork wise, if you have a name before the baby's released from the hospital. No pressure, but could you guys get it together? She didn't say that, but that was the but.
That was the intention.
So we were like, all right, we have this list of 5. We got to do this. So like, I remember he was like, I'm like, Jeremy, what's your least favorite name on that list? Okay, cross that one off. What's my least favorite? Okay, we got it down to 3. And then we like did this like, ballot. We're like, here's my list of how I'm gonna rank these top 3 names. I mean, needless to say, Jeremy and I made it scientific, because we just can't help ourselves. We're both scientists, so we did this very logical, how do we get through this list? And that's how we landed on Kolby, is that I think he might have been at the top of mine, and he was like second in Jeremy's list of top, how to rank the 3. And then our first and thirds were like flipped, and so I was like, It's Kolby. So it's Kolby Jeremy Green. So Jeremy, we had his name be the middle name, and then Declyn, we got our stuff in order. We were more prepared. And honestly, I just really liked the name. I will say I wanted, initially, so both Jeremy and I have Scottish in our genetic ancestry. So I started looking at all the Scottish boys' names. It was a hard thumbs down on some of them. I just remember like Angus was one. I mean, there's some real heavy Scottish names. And so I was like, not a fan. So I started looking at Irish names. Not that I get confused for being Irish. Every St. Patrick's Day, somebody asks me if I'm Irish. I'm like, no. Scots also have red hair. But so that's how I found Declyn, is that it's a very common Irish name, and that's how we landed on that. So Declyn, his middle name is Mitchell, which is my maiden name, Declyn Mitchell Green.
Very nice.
So,
is there any meaning or intention behind what those names signify, or are they just?
We just really liked them. Yeah. I will say that, so our last name Green, I just feel like it's a very common last name. I mean, it's a little vanilla as far as, and so I was just like, I just can't have a super, I wanted it to be a little bit of a personality with the first name, because the last name is, I feel like Steve Green could also be in the witness protection program. Like if you just had a bland first name and a bland last name, you're just like, is that really your real name? So I did kind of intentionally want to have something that is unique, and for the most part, they don't have any friends that have, their same names, so I feel like I was successful on that front.
Nice. Yeah, Levi was unique when growing up.
Yeah.
I only met one other Levi my age until, even to this day, I've only met one Levi in my life, my own age, like within probably 5 years of myself.
Yeah.
But a ton of little kids now.
Oh, it is a very popular younger name, for sure. I've met a few Camillas. There's a lot of Camilles out there. Yeah. But as far as the Camilla Club.
Camilla, is that your full name? And
yes.
You go by Cami?
Yes, I do. I guess my mom told me that when I was in kindergarten, I came home from school and I told her that I was now going to be referred to as Cami. Okay. And so then she spelled it out on a piece of paper, because that was going to be my name. So let's learn how, I'm in kindergarten, let's learn how to write my name. And so she spelled it Camie. And she then told me that I was like, Mom, there's no E. On this nickname I had just created 5 minutes before, I was also very confident as to the spelling of how my nickname was going to be. So that's how Cami, and it stuck. My mom calls me Cami. It's only my dad that really continuously calls me Camilla. And he really just loves the name. Yeah.
So going back a little bit, you were talking about your mom was basically a single mom.
Yes.
From when you were 2 till 15, you were saying?
Yep.
Yeah. And then she met your stepdad. Was that period of time, did you see, I know you're a kid, so you're not as in tune with a lot of things that you see looking back. Like with my mom, she was a single mom twice before she met Kit. Yeah. And I know, like, as a kid, I didn't know any different. But looking back, I could see, like, oh, wow, she really had to persevere and power through a lot of stuff. Like,
yeah. I am right there with you that as an adult, I've learned so much more about how hard it really was being a single mom, for sure. And not knowing, like, that any of those struggles, she kept those very well concealed from us, as far as just, like, I noticed it. So I was a cheerleader. I started that, like, I think I made the squad in 7th grade, which is a junior high. Junior high was 7th through 9th. So in 9th grade, I was a cheerleader. And I remember cheerleading camp, my mom was like, we might need to ask our grandparents for some help. Up until then, financial stuff was just, my mom jokes that like, we would go shopping, my mom and I, that's a real, that's a bonding thing we've had since I was a little girl. And we always shopped the sales, and that was a fun thing I remember growing up. Like, that was what was fun, and like, what kind of deals can we get?
Right.
I mean, as an adult, I realized my mom was just, like, she had to buy stuff on
Cami to the
sale.
clearance racks.
Like, that's what we can afford. But my mom actually made it fun.
Yeah.
Like, that was like the challenge of, let's go to the store and see if we can find a deal.
Right.
But like as an adult, like you look back on that and you're like, oh my gosh, things that like they just went over my head. But that was
because you got your boys now, and Kolby's getting older to where he's going to be a lot more.
I know everything's
in sports, athletics, and extracurriculars and stuff, and
yeah, it's like they definitely I would say that they don't need you as much, but they are more, like everything is just more expensive. I will say Kolby went from like just changing from kid sizes to he's now, adult male sizes. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, your shoes are so expensive compared to kids' shoes, getting man shoes. And you're going to grow out of them next year. Right. So that's what's even worse about the man shoe price.
Right. I don't know how many times my mom we would go shopping and she would just be like, I wish we would have named you after cheaper blue jeans.
You're like, I
like, no, I have to have Levi's.
They're the best jeans, Mom. And she's all like, they are. But yeah, I think even my mom shared more stuff as now I'm a mom. You kind of, that transition of being a mom to, as an adult, my relationship with my mom has evolved as well. Like, there's not that dependency. There's still always nurturing. My mom is still taking care of me, but it's different. So I think she's definitely shared more about childhood and perspectives. But that really came once I became a mom.
Yeah. We
could talk about, like, I don't know if she just waited to talk to me about some of it, or it was now we just had some shared experiences that we could talk about.
Yeah. I think definitely, as a mother, you want to protect your kids from the struggles that you're dealing with. Like, I don't know how much stuff my mom, struggled with behind the scenes that we were completely oblivious to, but it was like, and I don't know if this is accurate for you, but once you have kids, it's like all of a sudden all your priorities are them. And yourself is going to take a back burner.
Oh, for sure. I feel like, well, I'm a lot more aware of that dynamic. I mean, if it is just like your schedule is full, I'll do the sacrifice on something, so that we're not sacrificing something for the kids. But I also try to have some time. We are outdoorsy, so I still like to go on a run or I'll go on a bike ride, and that's my me time. Yeah. And I feel it if I don't. Stuff happens. When the pandemic hit, oh my gosh, talk about the kids aren't going to school anymore and now they're home, and I am somehow this remote educator in addition to doing my job, and that was the first thing to go. There was no time for me to do a workout, and I went 9 months, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to start going on a run, because that 25 minutes is really all I just need some alone time. But I noticed that, as far as that was one of the very first things, that when the kids were home 24/7, I was just like, okay, I got to take care of them 24/7. There's no dropping them off at school, getting a little breather. It was all the time. And I was like, oh, I need to get back to a tiny bit of me time for just my mental health.
Yeah. it's key. I didn't even really start working out until the pandemic, but it's like, it's the blood flow and all that, and exercise is great, but it's also like you're saying, you just get away from everything.
Yes.
And like just your mind is just
you can think about something. Like I'll have a run where I'm like thinking about something and really processing a whole, like I've been thinking about this idea and let's think about, and then I have other runs where I don't even think about anything. And I'm like, wow, 30 minutes, I didn't think about anything. Like
that's my go-to is when my mind is just packed full and I can't focus anymore. I have too much. I'm like, go for a run. Go do something where you have to focus on other parts of your body or something to where your brain doesn't have the time and energy to juggle all that stuff.
And it's such a nice reset.
Yeah.
It can make all the difference. You know, I'll have like a work Teams call where it ends and I say leave meeting and I'm like, I'm gonna go for a run. And you know what? I come back and whatever was bothering me doesn't bother me as much. But yeah, it can be, being a mom is like being overwhelmed and loving it all at the same time. You know? It's like you're right on the edge of like, it's too much, but I still love it.
Yeah. I kind of get it. Obviously, I'm not a parent, but I feel like in the relationships I've had, like my work passions are like my baby, and it's that same thing when I'm on a film shoot. Like I've graduated up to assistant director and producing, and I was like, you're running the whole show, and it's some of the most stress of anything in the world. Yeah. But I feel so at home with it. Like I feel like this is like the passion of getting it all done. It's so beautiful. I'm like,
you're feeling fulfilled, and yet you're also stressed and worried, and like it's all of that. Yeah. That is, they're very similar, you know, simultaneous emotions.
Except I can wrap a film and go home and just sleep for a month and catch up, whereas moms are moms.
Yeah, we are all the time. We are.
So, back to you. You met Jeremy when you were applying for a job because your mom suckered you into staying to Utah.
Yeah. Yep.
What was that job? Because you were a biologist coming out of school, right?
Yes. So it was a company that did like really like precursor pharma research. Like they were trying to find potentially drug targets that perhaps a pharmaceutical company might be interested in buying. So that like it was very like early stage research that might develop into something and it might not. And so I did that for about 2 years. I knew enough after those 2 years that's not what I wanted to do forever. So I was already starting to look for something else. Because when I was graduating from the University of Utah with a biology degree, I remember standing in the commencement line and you know, these were friends of mine. All of them were going either for master's, PhD, or med school, and I was not. And I remember a friend of mine in the commencement line, like we're wearing our caps and gowns, just like straight face looking at me, like, what in the world are you gonna do with a biology degree? And I was like, I think there's stuff. Because I did not entirely know what I was gonna do, but I really felt like I could do something with just my biology degree. But you know, 2 years into this job that I was not like crazy about, I was like, well, maybe like I need to find something that I'm gonna love, or maybe I need to go back to school. But I found a job. I actually had a coworker that was applying to the FBI, and I thought that sounded super cool. But I didn't want to move to Virginia, which the FBI is based, and even if you get a field job with the FBI, you still have to do all your training in Quantico, Virginia. But it like, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So then I started looking like, maybe there's something else. And that's when I saw a job opening at the Utah State Crime Lab. And I applied for that job, and I got that. And got me into forensics, and I've been in that field for 21 years.
Yes, I was going to say, that's what I know you mostly for.
Yes, yeah, I mean, I've been in the field for 21 years, so I can confidently tell you that I love this field because I stayed in it.
Years ago, I was getting into my film career, and my mom was bragging to me that Cami made it first. You were on some TV show, right? The Cold Case series or something like that.
I feel like I've had a little 2 minutes of fame on one TV show and another 2 minutes. I think maybe I don't even think I've made it to 15 minutes because I think it's just been a handful of crime shows.
You got 8 to 10 minutes of your 15 minutes.
I think I'm at like 8. Yeah, I think maybe I'm at 8 to 10. So I mean, there's
6 minutes left.
I still could do something with myself.
What were some of those experiences? What were they reaching out to you for?
So once I worked at the Utah State Crime Lab for a couple of 3 or 4 years, and then I went to a private DNA testing lab.
Okay.
And the private DNA testing labs, they tended to they got cases from all over the country, and it was typically higher profile or cold cases that particular law enforcement, whether they got some grant money or that case was just, they wanted it done faster, they wanted to do more testing than their public resource lab could do. So working for a private forensic testing lab really brought more of those high profile cases to our lab to work on. And that's kind of how all of that then transpires, is that you work more high profile cases. So, if they're going to make a TV show, they're going to probably pick the higher profile cases. And then I was always like the token scientist, I was one of many interviews that you'll see on a show. I'm just like, so what did you do? I was like, oh, I did this little 30-second clip of work.
Has Dateline NBC reached out to you yet?
No, I've never been on Dateline. No.
Hey, Shane? One of our very first guests ever on the Heckle Proof podcast, my buddies I was telling you before, is a producer for Dateline. And he's been doing, I feel like, 20 years or so.
Oh, yeah.
And tons and tons. He's researched cases for, I think, like a decade before all of a sudden finding a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The most I appeared on, so there was a whole series of this show that did a whole bunch of cases, and that production company came to our lab because they wanted to have, as they were filming, they would find something, and the filming was only like a week, maybe 10 days. It was 7 to 10 days that they were there at that site. And so they wanted to get there, find the evidence, ship it. So this was all they were trying to recreate as much as they could real time. They would ship the evidence to us. We would do a quick turnaround time, typically 4 or 5 days, so that by the end of their filming time, they could call and get the results. So I will say that when your mom says she's seen me on TV, I haven't, my voice, I was always the person on the phone call. They were calling Cami with the DNA testing results. So I feel like my voice has been on TV more than my face. Whatever that means. I have a voice for TV.
All right, one more thing I totally forgot. I'm going to grab something out of my car real quick.
Okay.
Hang tight.
Okay. Oh.
So from cold cases on TV.
Yes.
To, so this is a book, Murder Takes All.
Yes.
Georgia Cockerham writes these stories about murder and mystery on the Oregon coast.
Yes.
And she's I'm writing these stories.
Forensic science consultant.
There we go.
It has been fascinating to work with Georgia because working in forensics, it is all the science. There's it's black and white. we test the evidence, it matches or it doesn't match. And I mean, there are yes, no, black, white answers all the time. And helping her on a fictional book on like, well, what if, or what could be possible, and taking like my scientific knowledge and then adding this element of essentially like the fiction part of it is like, oh my gosh, maybe this could be something. So I typically Georgia will ask me like, is this possible? And I'll be like, well, maybe not this, but this could be possible. But most of the time she gives me like 3 or 4 scenarios, and then we talk through like the predominant specialty in forensic science that I have is DNA testing. And so I'll give her just like, this is how DNA could be deposited, this is how it could be detected. But we've also, I'm currently working for a toxicology testing laboratory, so we've had a case where it's like, how could you poison somebody and have it not detectable? And
wait, how could you do that?
so I have to say that has tapped into an element of creativity that I don't normally get to sit in my thoughts with. Because, most of scientific testing is just like, yes, no, positive, negative, match, not match. And this is kind of this world of like, what maybe we could create this idea and situation that, in the context of what she's writing may or may not have ever happened in that sequence of events. And I really have enjoyed that creative outlet.
Yeah. I won't get into too much about reviewing Georgia's books or anything. I got to meet her. We were doing a movie in Brookings 2 years ago. We were filming it, and it's finally getting released in January.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we went for a location last minute, and my mom said, I'll reach out to Georgia. We needed an interrogation room. She works volunteering with the police department out there.
Oh, that's so cool.
Having dinner with her after we wrapped the film, and she gifted me an edition of each of her books.
Oh.
And without getting into it, I read the first 2 so far, and I do have to say, her husband, I think, is ex-police.
I think he worked both for the FBI and local.
Right, yeah.
Some whether it was a city or a county, but he did local law enforcement as well. So he's got the law enforcement perspective.
Mm-hmm. But just in meeting her, she felt so innocent to me.
Oh, really? That you're like, wow.
Like all this crime and drugs and drama, and I'm like,
I know. She has a dark side, and she's just putting it. That's her outlet. Is that book? I mean, we all have probably a dark side.
So as far as helping her figure out how DNA could be deposited, we've all seen all the sex crime drama shows, and there's 100 jokes about how much semen is in this room.
Oh my gosh,
but
I know.
Outside of, I think semen and blood are the most notorious DNA.
Yes.
What are some of the more unique ways that people don't think about? Not like I'm gonna do anything with this, but like, what are some of the completely random, no one would ever suspect, like, here's how they've left evidence behind of their person?
I mean, I feel like, we always used to joke that like a really smart criminal is really hard to catch because they think of all this stuff, but it's a pretty common occurrence that like someone will break into a house or somebody's committing a crime and they're wearing gloves. So they're thinking fingerprints. I mean, this is a very deliberate, they are trying to, and then they leave the crime scene and then they immediately take off their gloves and just, so you just have to like follow the trace and then like swab the inside of those gloves, and that's the perpetrator right there. Thank you. We've had also burglary cases where they'll go in and eat the food at the house. And you can swab a half-eaten apple and get a wonderful DNA profile. And so it's just like they're not thinking about that kind of, they're thinking body fluids.
Overthinking in one area.
Yes, they're wearing their gloves, they're even wearing a mask, and they, then they eat an apple and then they set it down and still they're covered up. So it's those kind of things that, I feel like the science is always trying to one up what's the next thing that you can, do. Is it more sensitive? Is it, a bigger pool of people to try to find, because a DNA profile on its own at a crime scene is it doesn't mean anything.
It's just one little piece of a whole puzzle, right?
Well, it's an unknown DNA profile.
Gotcha.
What makes DNA powerful is that our DNA is unique to us.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to then know who deposited that. So you have to look for that person that actually has that DNA. And once you get a match, now you have a really strong case. Like, even if they say, I've never been there, your DNA proves otherwise. We know you were there. But without knowing who that original donor is, if that donor remains unknown, all you have is an unknown DNA profile at a crime scene.
Because not everyone's DNA fingerprints in a database.
Nope.
Right? And
No.
You have to put these pieces together, find the suspect, and
Yeah.
there's enough evidence with this suspect. Let's see if their DNA matches.
Yes. Yeah. I will say, though, all of my years of experience in forensics, I have a very high stranger danger.
Just like your own real life interactions?
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
my real life interactions, and I know that has carried over to my children.
I was just going to say, did it become stronger once you had kids?
Absolutely. But I have fully rubbed off on them. Like, we just don't trust people we don't know. I mean, and then once we know them, we can trust them. But right off the bat, no, we don't trust strangers. And they're like, why, Mom? I was like, Mommy's work is why I don't trust strangers. When they were little. Now they know a little bit more about forensics, they understand. But I remember, like, we were walking, it was at Christmas time, and I just was like looking around, like nobody's following us to, our car, because I'm carrying all these Christmas packages, and like somebody, I thought they were approaching me, so then I was like, we're gonna go down this other way, and I remember my oldest son is like, Mom, why do you not like strangers? And I was like, Mommy's work. It's why I don't trust anybody.
Yeah. We're not going to throw any trauma on him at a young age. Just keep it generalized.
Yeah.
I did have a friend of mine years ago. We were camping somewhere in the Rockies, middle of winter. We were trying to navigate through the middle of the night, and it was like, it's too late, there's too much snow, we're going to pull over. Dug out into the snow, then pitched our tent.
Yeah.
And then we were right by, it was either a really large creek or a really tiny river, I don't know,
Okay.
but some body of water, and just cracking and all these noises all night long, and my mind just going crazy about like grizzly bears and black bears and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's probably just ice breaking in the water,
Or it's a smaller animal
Right.
that is totally harmless. I've done the exact same thing.
But he said something along the lines of, we're generally safer out here than in any city in the middle of the night. And that stuck with me from that point. I was like, it makes so much sense. Like,
Yes.
wild animals they're wild, but if they're not starving or you're invading, on their family, on their youngins, if it's a mama
Seriously,
bear or a
there's
mama
very
critter.
few mammals that are actually gonna come after a human. So even if it was probably a deer drinking some water, and that deer is so much more afraid of you than
Any bear would have been hibernating by then if it was smart.
Exactly. Oh, it's so true. Like, big crowded places. That's where I'm like, when my kids were really young, if I lost sight of them, like in a mall or in anything where there were a lot of people, I went from like 0 to 60 very quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I can't see them, and now I'm screaming at the top of my lungs their name. And it went from like, I went to a panic place, I think quicker because of my forensic background.
Yeah.
And there's been no negative things that have happened. They were just far enough out of my line of sight that I totally lost it.
Yeah. We used to have the the wristband leashes.
Oh, really? I never did
how much
that.
you used them, but
I never did that with my kids. But yeah, we were at like a rest stop because we are on the road and doing stuff all the time. And I mean, it was literally like my youngest was maybe 50 yards away, but there was just enough of a hill that I had truly lost sight of him. And I mean, I just shouted his name, and then this cute little voice was like, "I'm just right here, Mom." And I was like, the whole rest area had felt my panicked mom voice when I just screamed his name. Like all of a sudden, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh!" And he was like hardly, maybe not even 50 yards, maybe just 50 feet, but I had lost sight of him. So. I do blame, I mean, some of that is just motherly instinct, but there is a component of me working in forensics this long that I have seen so many worst case scenarios that I go to worst case scenario. And my worst case scenarios are usually a little grimmer than
a typical person's.
Yes.
Well, you keep a very good attitude.
Well, thanks. I try not to unload on my kids about like, "Oh my gosh, do you know what could have happened?"
Does Jeremy get that? You get that load on Jeremy after the fact?
No. I mean, I would say that Jeremy's interested. I learned very early on that my mom thought my job was super cool, and then she asked about like one or two cases, and I like really got into explaining them. And I really only got about a quarter of the way through before her eyes were just like, I don't want to know any of this. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. I can give you the TV version of this case, but my bad. I went to, and I feel like Jeremy's a little bit that way. Like he doesn't need to know the nitty gritty. Like if there's something cool, he can take the cool part,
right.
But he doesn't want to know the dark and dirty.
I do. You can share that with me.
Okay, all right.
Morbid, right. But I take it because I do all my comedy, like I love, like I see the world in a wholly, like, just abstract and ridiculous way. So I think a lot of stuff I'm just so curious about human nature to a point that doesn't affect me on like that I know of yet.
Yeah,
on like a darker painful level, but I'm like, curious.
Like there is this whole component of people that work in a forensic lab. Like a coping mechanism is humor.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be disrespectful, but you know, we can find humor in maybe some darker things than the general population probably would not find humor in it. But it is both for coping and just, you know, sometimes you just need to laugh. Like,
most definitely.
In the horror of it all, that was a ridiculous thing to say, and we're all kind of laughing, and it's inappropriate. We're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe we're all laughing at this crime scene. But how do you get through the crime scene? Like, you know?
Well, you got to come to my comedy show because some of those are like crime scenes.
All right.
All right. That's some really bad shows.
Like, killing it.
Getting into wrapping this all up, what is one of the major things, if there's anything that really changed when you first became a mom, from your life before to your life as a mom? It was
just worrying about another person, like deep worry about what might happen to them, what I might do to impact their life. Well, of course I'm going to do stuff to impact their life, but I want it to be positive.
Right.
I sure hope I don't screw them up. It is like, it can be paralyzing worry of just like, I don't know what to do in this situation. And then when you have more than one child, everything you learned and maybe stuff that worked on the first none of it's applicable. None of it transfers. It's like all non-transferable knowledge. Like you worry about slightly different things. Worry. It's just worry.
What's your favorite thing about being a mom?
Oh, I just so proud to watch them grow up and be their individual selves. The amount of pride I feel, I mean, it can be for like a big thing. They're up on a stage doing something and you're just filled with pride. And other times it's just like they gave their brother a hug and I'm just like, that is the best moment of like my whole week and month. So much pride.
Yeah. Who's the most mature or the least mature out of Declyn, Kolby, and Jeremy?
Oh, I was going to say, are you going to include...
I already know the answer to who's the least mature.
I mean, the least mature is my youngest son, Declyn. And I love it. He's so much more like me than I even probably will admit. And I admit that he's a lot like me.
In what way?
Oh my gosh, he's so stubborn. He does have like kind of a shorter fuse. I blame my red hair. Declyn doesn't have red hair, so he can't blame that. So he can just blame me for that.
When he starts growing a beard, it'll come in.
Yeah, maybe, yes. His temper, his stubbornness, he just kind of bounces around to a lot of different hobbies. Like he's like into this and he's into that and he likes that and and I'm like, yeah, like it all. I mean, I don't know. I feel like most mature, Kolby and Jeremy are so similar. I mean, right now, this weekend, because Jeremy's maturity dramatically decreases when he's around his brothers. So for sure right now and this weekend, Kolby is the most mature person in our family. Absolutely, hands down. Yep.
Yeah, I can see that.
but in a normal situation, they're pretty neck and neck because Kolby is actually pretty darn mature. Mm-hmm. Almost like I'm like, lighten up,
Yeah.
But he's like.
Well, he's the older brother too, so he's kind of got to be a little bit.
He does have
looking out for him.
Right? And as a mom, I'm just like, oh, don't put all of that on you. Mm-hmm. Be a kid.
Right.
I'm worried about it. I'm just worried.
Well, I don't have a brilliant way to wrap this up. But
it's all right. It's so much fun.
Love sitting here and having a little time with you. This has been
all
fun.
right. Yeah, it has been. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me, and should we get back to the family?
Yeah, we should. Yep.
Awesome.
They might be calling for, they're gonna be
Your kids have been out of sight.
They're gonna need a video for proof of life. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. All right.
That's one of the dark
thank
places.
you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right.
That's it.
That was super fun. And scene. I'm just kidding.
Oh no.
It didn't record at all.
No, I never hit record on the sound.
You did not. Levi, you did not.
We got the camera audio. The camera audio is there. The camera audio is just not.
That's the whole. Like you're still doing all of this.
Time being those levels, and I forgot to hit the record button.
You gotta be kidding me. No, are you joking?
I'm not joking. I'm like, I go to hit stop and it's already powered off. Because it powers off after a while.
Well.
All right, let's just do it all over again.
Just do it all over again. Make it feel natural. Well, you got a video.